Happy Friday, everyone. So we're going to get started. We're super excited to have all of you join us today. We have a P3 Strategy Series event. It is all about collaborating for growth and how universities and entrepreneurs can build stronger communities together. We have an exciting guest speaker, Scott Taylor from Cal State Fullerton, who I believe many of you may have already met during our mingling. And before I pass the mic on to Scott, a few things of housekeeping. So if you aren't aware, 2 to 3 times a month we have our P3 strategy series, and basically what we do is we bring together leaders from the public sector as well as the private sector to share how people can work together to improve the community. And so public sector would be government individuals, municipal representatives, if you want to learn more about what's going on in the legislative world, or maybe from the private sector, we have people from local foundations or maybe universities who kind of speak to how they can bring you more benefits or more grants for your startups or entrepreneurship pathway. These events are hosted by Sunstone Cities. If you have more questions about Sunstone Cities, Ryan is at the front. He is our guy, and he can answer all of your questions and more. But basically, Sunstone Cities really focuses on working together with key partners, such as the City of Anaheim, City of Lakewood, and other municipal governments to enact change. And of course, if you happen to be one of those government folks, one of those people who knows a government person looking for assistance in staff augmentation, in economic development consulting, or in public infrastructure financing solutions, we can help make those connections. Without further ado, allow me to introduce our guest speaker for today, the amazing Scott Taylor. Scott, to the stage, please.
Excited to be here, actually. Fridays are always a lot of fun, and it was interesting today. This time of year is when the rain usually comes in Seattle, so it was really nice. That's where I'm coming from, to come out and see the sun, and excited to be here with you. As she said, my name is Scott Taylor. I just finished at the University of Washington in their PhD program. I got my PhD in, I guess they call it business strategy, because there's different types of way, but technically it's in entrepreneurship and innovation. And I am now the professor of entrepreneurship in residence at Cal State University Fullerton, and also my research is sponsored through USC as well, so I'm up there once a month. And I was asked to come here, which is super exciting, to talk about how I think universities can build stronger entrepreneurial communities. I'm gonna ask a few questions. So, and these, are rhetorical, so you don't have to answer them. So, what do you think, is key to having a strong individual? We'll talk about strong communities, but what do you think is key to strong individuals? And what the research actually says, if you've ever read this study, it's the Grant-Harvard study. And what they did is they took, back in the early 50s, they took Harvard students, ages 19 to 23, and they started following them through about 70 years of their life. And they looked at their lives. Some of them ended up homeless, some of them ended up being, one of them actually was the president of JFK, was one of them in the study. And some of them ended up dying early, and some were just happy in general. And what they found out, that this was the finding from all these years of study. So 70 years, they interviewed their parents, their grandparents, and now they've been interviewing their kids, done blood tests. So this is a very robust public study. And what they realized is that diverse and deep relationships that from people different from them, who challenge them, to still have their best interests in mind, were the difference between those who thrived and those who didn't. All right, so I guess now we go from the individual level to the community level. What really is the key to strong communities? There's this book from Robert Putnam. Has anyone read this, by the way, Bowling Along? It's an easy read. It's like 70 pages, which is always kind of nice. Right? But he actually showed what wasn't the key. And he said the following. He said that Americans have become less socially connected. They join fewer clubs, churches, unions, civic groups, even as they remain busy as individuals. Everyone here, oh, what do you do? Oh, I'm so busy, right? But he shows in his book that the decline in social capital, networks, trust, norms of reciprocity, those types of things, those things actually weaken communities. And so he blames, which is kind of funny, this is back in 97, he blamed television. That's one of the things. And can you imagine what he would think today, right? If he came back and saw what we spend our time doing, how we disconnect through social media, some of these things that are actually meant to have connection. So, but his core idea is that we're actually still bowling, but we do it alone. So his core idea is bowling, and rebuilding those shared ties is actually what we need to build a healthy and thriving and stronger community. And I guess what's the key to strong businesses? I think we talked about this a little bit. It is bicycles. No, I'm just kidding, it's not, right? But it's that our businesses actually do thrive on key relationships as well. And these relationships can't be with just friends and family. A lot of people, when they research their business, that's the first people who they talk to. And they're like, oh, that's great, wonderful, everything you do is amazing. And they fail, right? Not always, but in some cases, right? But creating relationships and connections that they didn't exist beforehand. And that's kind of where I'm going with this talk. About in a time when these like traditional communities, institutions, churches, clubs, unions, all kind of on a decline. And I'm sure you've read about universities and how the enrollment in top universities has actually gone down. Because there's other forms of education, right? There's online education, there's DIY. I know some of you, if you're anything like me, love YouTube for fixing stuff. Right? Back in the day, you'd ask your neighbor. And you go around again. So, or if you're missing eggs, you order from Amazon versus like knocking on the neighbor's door. Hey, it's Sunday, the stores are open. Can you help me out? So we lose these public spaces. But the misunderstanding that I get a lot when people are like, oh, education isn't worth it, is that they don't understand that universities are actually one of the last structured spaces for building relationships. Where these relationships didn't exist before, where you actually have to communicate with humans in a classroom who are different from you, versus online communities where you can find your community, everybody will validate everything you say, and if not, then they'll troll you, right? There's no in between in some of those types of aspects. But universities are actually one of those last sacred shared spaces where you can build what we call, what you've probably heard before, social capital. And these campuses connect students, researchers, industries, partners, and they create durable ties long after students graduate, right? But our community actually thrives on these relationships, creating relationships and connections where they didn't exist before. And why do entrepreneurs fit into this mix? Okay, so entrepreneurs actually, why they're so important to building this type of social capital is they take the set social capital from the school, from those relationships, and they bring it into the public sector. The innovations, again, entrepreneurs are the ones who collaborate with universities and bring that here into the public sector. And these, again, here's just a kind of smattering of different types of firms that use technologies and businesses and have benefited actually from these types of relationships. And these create thriving communities. And I would challenge you, and I was meeting ChatGPT or friends yesterday or the day before, when I was really challenging, okay, what type of things we have in our life that don't have to do with university research, university technology, and there are very, very few that do. Because if we take some of these aspects that we think don't, were built by the private sector, a lot of the theories and behind them actually have come from universities and those types of things, right? But these are key, these relationships between entrepreneurs and universities to building thriving communities and stronger communities. So my job, I always get asked, what's your vision for the center? Right? So I'm actually the director of the Entrepreneurship Center at Cal State Fullerton. And my goal and my vision is to be able to create relationships. So what we do at Cal State, and hopefully and UCI does a lot of this, other universities, is we try to create these connections that didn't exist before. So we have mentors who've done, you can imagine, they've done everything. Yesterday I met with one of the mentors who sells airplane engines to Africa, right? And to these different ambassador centers all over the world. And I'm like, I've never heard of that. it's amazing, right? But I have that access, but also every student in all my classes at all the university has access to him as a mentor, right? So we have the incubator, again, the tight fast pitch, which we have middle schools and high schools and college students all come together and pitch together, and again create those relationships that hopefully turn eventually into entrepreneurial ventures. And this is going to start turning a little bit into my story. Here's right here on the left, Jeff. I'm at BYU. Jeff's actually from here, and he met Zach, and they went on Shark Tank, and they wanted, it was kind of one of those pitches for a company called Mission Belt, if you ever heard of that, where he clicks instead of has holes. Anyway, so it's a huge belt company, and these three met in college. They brought all that knowledge back here to OC and started investing in the communities here. What was interesting about Mission Belt is that their goal wasn't necessarily just profit. So their mission was to feed families, and so they used a lot of those profits to social venture, to feed families in some places where they've been. Right, so university to entrepreneurs, entrepreneurs to the community. And Jeff and I actually have done a lot of business together over the years. We met in my senior year at BYU in a consulting class, and we've been doing business together for over 20 years, right? And so this gentleman right here, his name is Ralph Little. Ralph Little, I got my MBA at University of Utah in finance, and this was during 2009. So if you know what 2009 looks like, MBA in finance was not the best place to be. So I took a class in entrepreneurship on a whim, and the whole course, this is the whole course. He showed up the first day. He said, okay, well, your grade is based on you making a $10,000 a month, making $10,000 a month on what your idea has to cost less than $100. And so business license was 25, so it was more like 75 bucks, right? But that was our whole class. And so I pitched my ideas at Expo, and then the class was over, and I emailed him afterwards, and I said, hey, I'm actually serious about this idea. He said, well, come over to my house. So I met with him over at his house, and he told me, he said, Scott, you're making $1 million from this idea. And I was like, oh, okay, nice. And so it ended up resulting in what was this direct sell expo. We sold out for 3 years, sold it. And during this process, though, Ralph mentored me every step of the way. He took zero equity, and he just wanted the best for me. I talked to marketing professors during this program, and Tina Diekman, who was my negotiations professor, who said, don't pay this, and I had access to all of these different assets just because I went to school with these professors, and they gave me all of their time. And this ended up into multiple ventures, a local flower shop, and I mean, I can list all of them, but this sent me on a trajectory where I actually invested back into the community, and I didn't know where to start with how the relationships that I built during my college experience, because one professor decided to invest in me, right? And this one was the business that did really, really well, where we provided regulatory affairs for cosmetics, food, and nutritional supplements. And guess who I called when I started the business? I called Tina, I called Ralph, and I'm like, how do I build this? I'm getting these clients, how do I do this? And again, people at the University of Utah and my friend Jeff were the two who helped me launch this business that I sold and did really, really well. And brought me actually into teaching at some of these incredible universities here. Because of my success in business, BYU asked me to come teach there, and that completely changed my life. I ended up doing research on small businesses and startups, and in what I call nascent industries that didn't exist, like air taxis and those types of things at Harvard, and then ended up doing my PhD through the University of Washington. There's no way I could have done without the relationships with people I didn't know, I didn't have access to, but because people invested in this sector, that I was able to benefit from that. And that's why I'm here, right? So universities, this is that whole process, right? Universities strengthen entrepreneurs strengthen communities, and then people like me give back to it. Jeff, the one that you saw earlier, he's on the executive board for entrepreneurship at BYU now, giving back. You actually have to pay to be on the board, right? Which is great. He spends his time and efforts in those types of endeavors to strengthen our communities. And what's so special that's not the same, if we went back to these universities, right? BYU, University of Washington, Harvard, they have businesses that usually are all over the world. People go all over, and very very international. But when you invest in Cal State Fullerton, this system, and I didn't know this, but 84% of the people start their business here, and they live here, and they build a community here from the university, which is not like a lot of the universities that I'm used to, right? And that actually is something that's really exciting to me. You talk about building communities when you invest in like our center and our students and your time there. It is an investment here in Orange County. So again, I'm so grateful for the people who invested in me, and I know that how we actually build stronger communities isn't just by doing the same things that we do every day, but it's about investing in relationships that might be uncomfortable with us, and then finding partners who can connect us with resources that we otherwise couldn't access. And thanks for letting me be here. So that's it.
Thank you so much, Scott. Let's move on to the fireside chat portion. So, it's like a karaoke mic, basically.
I'm not very good at karaoke.
We could do karaoke.
My daughters love it. They'll love it.
Okay, so clearly from your experience, you have, your feet in both worlds, both on the entrepreneurial side and both on the academic side. So what's something that a university specifically that can do to help small businesses that the private market can't?
So I would ask a question as well, like how many private companies you know who have access to 11,000 students? Who have access to, I think CS has over 2,000 professors of different types of backgrounds and PhDs and everything you can think of, right? So the private sector can do a very good job at very specific problems. And I think that that's one thing that they do a great job of, right? But those problems also have to benefit them. Let's get real, right? They gotta, and social entrepreneurship is a movement, and it's moving forward. I get it, but a lot of times that's almost secondary. Their main goal in universities, one thing that they can do, two things, right? Two things. Number one is that they, again, have a broad expertise in almost any field you can think of. If I don't know somebody I know, a professor who knows somebody else. And again, usually we're pretty cheap, right? But secondly, I think universities by and large, and there's gonna be individuals, there's the whole bell curve, and universities over here who care more about their endowment and profit and whatever, and there's the universities here who care more about liberal arts. But I think by and large, the universities will invest not to see something back. They'll invest in people, they'll invest in ideas, and for the private sector, usually it has to turn a profit eventually. So.
Okay, so if the private sector is, as you say, a little more focused on the profits, then we need to focus on our relationships, right? Kind of like what you said earlier, building that community, building that network is really helpful on a wide variety of fronts. So what would you say to someone looking to become the next you, for example?
Don't do it. Don't become the next me, you'll end up falling short.
I don't have responsibility. What is one habit that you would recommend a founder do in order to start building those networks?
Oh, that's a good one. So in my case, marry a very good woman who loves relationships.
Aww.
I'm an introvert, and she has taught me the value of investing in other people. But I think one of the habits, if I were to redo it, was again to invest in people and their ideas, not just think about what you want to do. But you'll realize along the way that when you invest in people, you're always, doesn't matter what happens, you'll always be satisfied, you'll always be happy. And a happy mind is an active mind, is a creative mind. And I think that's, again, for me, that a habit is investing in people, listening to people, looking them in the eyes, being kind, and then realizing that those relationships, when they feel that you care, they'll invest in you, and when your idea comes along, they'll trust you. For me, that's made all the difference. And then ask. Like, it's okay to ask for things sometimes. You know, I love when people ask me to help them out. And I beg people. I said, my students, I tell them, like, hey, if you don't have food, because there's 8% of students in the state that they're homeless at Cal State. I said, if you don't have food, here's my house, here's my number, here's what I show up. Right? For me, that's made all the difference. And that's where a lot of these, I just got 2 calls this last week about people who want me on their board.
Congratulations.
Right? Oh, thanks. But because of the way that, not because of my expertise, but because of the way that I deal with people.
Okay, then how about this? How many of you in the audience are introverts? Raise your hand. I guess that was an issue in extroverts. So for these introverts,
Yeah.
how would you recommend they go out and build those relationships? Because there's networking, but then you have to small talk. There's pitching, but then you have to talk in front of a whole bunch of people. There's going to conferences and trade shows to pitch your product if you have an MVP. So if you're a startup entrepreneur, do you just suck it up and do it? Or do we all just need to clone your wife to move forward?
Let's do that. She's amazing. I think there's two answers to this question, and you go either way, right? You can suck it up and do it, sure, right? And I think there's a lot of merit to doing hard things that are unnatural to you, but maybe you're just terrible at it, and that could be it as well. And to take a biblical example, hire an Aaron, right? If you look in the Bible, you have Moses, and Moses said to himself, I cannot speak. And so God tells him, and again, this is not a religious thing, this is just a philosophical thing. Says, okay, well, there's this guy named Aaron, he loves to talk. Get him. Right, so find people who, wingmen or wingwomen, or I don't know what the appropriate term is nowadays, but a person who can help highlight your specific talents and abilities as well. And again, that goes back to my first answer of saying, invest in people, and you'll find your tribe, and your tribe will not look like you. Hopefully, they'll be much, much different from you, and they'll challenge you. And I can show you a text message this morning where I'm challenging one of my friends. She's probably mad at me right now. But at the same time, she knows that I have her best interest in mind and trying to help her think through a problem.
And then as far as public-private partnerships go, so obviously this is the P3 strategy series.
Yep.
Now that you are in the public sector, or I guess you've been in the public sector for a while, having worked at BYU and all that.
BYU's private.
Oh, BYU's private?
They are.
Never
So is
mind
USC.
that. So Cal State Fullerton is your first real foray into the public
You
sector.
got it.
How's that been?
Well, I guess we'll use University of Washington, that's not true.
Okay, there you go.
So, confusing.
Confusing.
Yeah, I think that if you look back to, and this is going to be me nerding out for just a second, if you don't mind, Weberian economics about bureaucracy. It was about specializing, again, and investing in these different types of relationships. Who does what best, and how do we connect them through processes, right? And that's not how I see the bureaucracy a lot in what I do. Things move very, very slow. And so that's really hard. Really hard for me. But yeah, I mean, it's so exciting though to work for an organization that my main goal is to help move the community forward. Whether it be innovation, students, professors, whatever. So for me, that's the part of where that public-private partnership really does profit, is when you have these types of relationships. But
I love that. You're a people person.
sort of, I have to be.
You have to be a people person.
Yeah, well, that's not necessarily with my wife though. It's like, if we want to use, entrepreneurship is the pursuit of opportunity despite the resources that you have, right? And I think one of the resources that we underestimate the most is people, right? I think that's one of the things that we underestimate the most. And so if I want to get a lot done in this life, I have to invest in people. So that's what I mean by I'm forced to, because I realize the merit of doing so. But it's not like I have to talk to people, I hate people, I don't. I love humans, most of them. And even those I disagree with, I love to listen to them and see where they come from. But I think for us to strengthen communities, and we're talking about public-private partnerships, it's still about the people. and how we work with the people in those types of ways. And I promise I've worked with governments and public-private partnerships all over the world. I was in regulatory affairs for almost 20 years, right? And it was really interesting that when I couldn't get something done, I'd fly out to Germany or I'd fly out to the Netherlands or wherever, and I would show up with there and say, what's going on here? How do we fix this? And then stuff would get fixed because they realized that I was investing in them. I had their best things in mind, and it was big. And that was not my idea. That was my boss's idea. Monsieur Ahmed was one of my bosses who invested again in me and would send me to these countries and say, go show up. And again, I did, and stuff got done. So, and I think I'm like not as crazy and introverted as maybe some people, because I still enjoy these relationships. But at the same time, like that forced me to, it was my job. And then I realized like, well, people are kind of amazing. So why not invest? I don't know. Why not get outside my shell? And because we're not really going to do anything unless there's like we have this internal regulation system of what am I going to get out of it and what do I have to invest. And unless what you get out of it is higher, then you're not going to invest in it. And so if you don't see people that way, you're not going to invest in them. You're going to stay in your shell, and you're going to be in my and so that's, you have to switch the way that you think into thinking about what do I get from this? What do you get from this? Is actually more than you could ever imagine when you invest in specific people. So,
given that mindset, let's open the floor to Q&A. What questions might you have for Scott over here?
On the diagram that you showed,
yes,
with the arrows,
yes,
where the influence goes, 2 arrows were missing.
which ones?
One from community to the entrepreneur, and the other from entrepreneurs to the university.
Right.
What is the reason for those not being shown? They don't exist, or they never have been considered.
Yes.
And it is something that needs to be discovered.
Right. So if the last arrow went back into the universities from the community, right? And so the community, the influence comes, isn't necessarily just that, right? This is just one path of how it works. There are many, many different paths in there. But if we go into academia, there'd be like 70 arrows and different mediators and moderators and you name it. But so this was just a simplistic diagram of it saying being a circular, that when one benefits, everybody benefits. And it's not just, universities end up benefiting community, but community does nothing for universities, or entrepreneurs do everything for community, but community doesn't do anything for entrepreneurs. And I think if that's the case, then that's a broken system, right? When there's not a circular system where everybody's having, is benefiting throughout, then it's a broken system.
Because that now brings another question. How do the universities bring in knowledge and experience from entrepreneurs? And associated with it, how do the entrepreneurs direct to the universities their experiences, skills, knowledge, and abilities?
Right.
Including, which you mentioned, important thing, networks. Networking.
So first you're saying how do the entrepreneur or universities?
Both ways, how does that operate?
Right. So I'm lucky, and I'm not your regular academic, and I have a lot of experience in the private sector. So when I moved to Orange County for Cal State Fullerton, I went through my LinkedIn and I started pinging everybody in Orange County, entrepreneurs who I knew through it. I said, hey, I have students and you have expertise, I want to connect them with you. And I think that's why we have a center and centers in general. I think some might be token centers. Oh wait, this is recorded. Sorry about that. But I think entrepreneurship actually is one where people like me and my friends also say he's the one mentoring me. He's at Utah Valley University, and he's been doing, again, private sector, back and forth. But that's how we get entrepreneurs involved in the classroom. Mike and the director before me, he has a list of 400 mentors that he's created through all these years, all his efforts, and they come in. I have them in my class right now.
So that covers the mentors.
Right.
For the students.
And they're all entrepreneurs.
And for the students.
Right. Yeah.
But how does the organization of the university draw out their experience for use by the university.
Wait, so I'm not sure I
Two
understand the question.
different, if you will, targets.
So you're saying, how does the
Demographics.
university bring in the talent from the entrepreneurs?
From the knowledge and other things that can be incorporated into the operation of the university.
Onto the operation.
One thing is the students,
Yeah.
the other thing is the university itself.
The second thing you're mentioning is I wish that were happening more. I wish that were happening more versus academics running a university on academic theories.
Right. As
Right,
opposed
I
to-
get it. So I see what you're saying.
As
But at the
opposed
same
to-
time, it's like what my real
Right.
job, if we're gonna say real job, is focused around research.
Right.
That's what I'm supposed to be doing, right? That's what I get tenured for
Yeah.
and everything else. That's what I get rewarded for. But the reality is I'm lucky again because I have these relationships and I do qualitative research. Qualitative research is where you go out and you talk to humans and you look at what they say, and I do that. But there's a huge group of them who just work with numbers and big data sets and those types of things, and that's super important. I totally understand that, but that's more. I don't know, value isn't necessarily the right term. That's more of an academic is running these, econometric models that predict, that, if you give this amount of charity, your ROI on it is this for your business and those types of things, right? And so I think what you're saying is super important is we need to bring a lot more of the entrepreneurs into
nothing
our
else-
operations.
If
right?
nothing else, as a subject of research.
Yeah.
But then, of course, they have knowledge that university doesn't have.
Well, that's the whole point.
Right.
That's why I go talk to them. That's why I go invest in them.
Right.
And so my dissertation, I looked at organic fair trade, a lot of these different types of certifications, and actually how they affect entrepreneurs, specifically those with very little resources. Because if you're a big company, getting certifications is no big deal. If you're a little company, you can concentrate on that. That actually shifts your whole strategy and how you invest in your resources. And those have path dependencies on your trajectory as a company. And everybody was totally against me because I know my certifications are awesome and they make sense. And then when I actually went out into the community and talked to them, that's not what they said. And so that aspect was missing from it. And that's why it's under review at one of the top journals in our field. It's because we never thought about this. I'm like, well, why not? Oh, because they don't talk to me. But I believe the tide is changing. I think we as universities are being held to a higher standard, which is good, and being rewarded in those type of aspects for ideas that come from the private sector, not necessarily from mathematical models. So in the business field,
Right.
the rest of it, I don't know.
That's just a different subject matter.
Yeah, but I think that we're trying to be a lot more cross-disciplinary. We're
Right.
talking about kinesiology and those types of things, about how do we build up our entire network, how we lift communities, and how we stop concentrating so much on things like funding.
Right.
Very thoughtful question. So, yes.
I'm curious to, you being an entrepreneur, working with whatever resources that you do have, and then your different business ventures.
Yeah.
Which one do you feel like was most rewarding? And then also, another question,
Yeah.
which one do you feel like was most rewarding? And then how do you go from business to business that's unrelated? Like, what's your mindset behind it, and how do you then break into that industry, other than, asking your mentors and so on and so forth?
Yeah.
Like, practically, how do you?
These are really thoughtful questions, right? So, which one was the most rewarding? If I were going to say which one were the most rewarding, my metrics are different now than they were at the time. So you're talking about me now or me then?
You know.
Me now would definitely be, which is kind of funny, be the flower shop. I loved it. People come in there, okay, try to be mad when you work on a flower shop on Mother's Day. It's impossible. My mom loves me so much, and so part of my job was taking phone calls. I was the owner, right? And I'd go there twice a year, was about it, and then look at the numbers. and as I would dictate cards for people to write, and sometimes I'd almost cry because they were just so sweet. Right? And for me, that was just so rewarding. But was it a huge moneymaker? No. Did it pay the bills? Yeah. I mean, I 2x'd it, which was great. You know, but I think that was, and then also, I talked to my family, you know, when they were in a tough spot or whatever, I'd give them a job doing delivery. One of my brother, who has a very severely special needs son, and was as a teacher, and they weren't supporting him very well. His wife did chocolate dipped strawberries, and that pushed us, and she'd make $1,000 in a day on Valentine's. And so those types of things were much, and I gave her all of it, even the fees, like the visa fees, you know. And those things were, for me, they were just so rewarding. And then also seeing, you know, I worked with my wife, and just seeing her so happy building flowers. She didn't like managing people. She liked being their friend. But again, I think that was the most rewarding at the time, you know. And how do you hop from one place to another? I think it's just the same concept of, I was, you know, with people who knew a lot better what they were doing than I did, and I see kind of their potential. And so how my consulting firm worked is I had, because I showed up all over the world for my last boss, and I had all these just relationships, and they weren't on, they were not in contract, they were just individual contractors. And so when I was building my business, I just said, hey, you'd be interested to it in this type of thing? And they said, oh yeah, I don't care who pays me, you know. And one of the ideas that started to spark in my mind in this case was, I dealt with highly specialized scientists in chemistry, biochem, in the chemical industry, food industry. They do not like dealing with people, and they want everything for them just so, right? And so I would build all the reports, deal with the people, and they could just do their job. That's all they wanted to do. I'm like, great, I can do that for you. And so for me, it was again more about like, I can do humans, and so humans are in every industry. So it didn't really, it was kind of a natural hop from place to place. And so, and then after a while, you just learn a lot of things, and people start coming to you with ideas, but you still have to be attentive to those things. So I don't think the industry matters really. I think the joy in entrepreneurship, if there is, if we want to call it that, is creating something of value. Right. And that value, you can measure it however you want, but for me, it was about, you know, making the world a little bit better, in little places, helping people out, and then seeing something that I built be rewarded by someone else, because it's their hard-earned money that they're spending on me, and me wanting to be like, okay, you're spending this on me, I want you to get back what you see. So that's kind of a long answer, but sure.
All right, well, I want to make sure that I leave some time for not for Q&A, we just said Q&A, that we leave some time for networking and mingling. Sorry to cut you off.
No, you're good.
But a few words of housekeeping. So, thank you so much, Scott. Oh, you can hang on. I'll just be real quick.
I feel like I'm in trouble sitting in this chair in the corner.
You guys can continue. Like, I just got to bounce because we have LA Tech Week. So, for those of you who don't know, Sunstone and all of its divisions host a ton of events. And so, if you enjoyed this one, we will have another one on the 24th. And we also have an event today at USC. So I'm gonna go back. And you are welcome to Q&A, Scott, as much as you want. So let's give a huge round of applause for the amazing speakers.